The moment the champagne bottle exploded and sprayed over the mounted flat screen in the break room, I already knew they were not going to pay me. Not in money, not in credit, not in basic human decency. I am Robert, 54 years old, and the system I built, line by line, sleepless night by sleepless night, just hit 550% above projected traffic. Real-time usage metrics rolled across the monitor like fireworks. Application programming interface uptime was flawless. Dashboards were responsive. Cross-departmental reporting was humming perfectly. The product was alive, breathing, efficient, and stable. That was not luck. That was me. People clapped. Marketing posted celebratory selfies. Sales handed out those corny foil balloons. I stood off to the side, sipping lukewarm sparkling water and watching my own work being passed around like a corporate party trick. I was not mad, not yet, just tired. Then my manager, Bradley, strolled in. He sported an expensive haircut and a permanent smirk and patted me on the shoulder like a dog who did not bite the guests. "Hey, quick thing," Bradley said, like it was an afterthought. "Your bonus is not going through the cycle. Policy stuff. You get it?" I blinked. "Policy? Yeah, upper levels are cracking down on post-launch bonuses," he said, already turning to walk away. "It is not personal. Not personal. Like my weekends spent babysitting database failures were not personal. Like the clause I negotiated in our licensing contract, line 17.5, subsection F, vendor alignment clause, was not damn personal. Like the blood in my coffee was not personal. I did not respond, did not scream, did not flip the printer off its tray. I nodded once and said, "Got it." What I really got was this. They thought I was replaceable. The man who rebuilt their data stack from the ashes of a contractor's half-finished garbage heap could be filed under cost containment. That policy was an acceptable insult to someone who literally negotiated the terms of legal use for the company's analytics vendor. That I would not notice the way Bradley flinched when he said it. That I would just keep showing up smiling like a cog in the machine that I built. I walked back to my desk. The noise of the room dimmed like someone turned down the volume on reality. My inbox was full of congratulations and requests to hop on a quick call. Everyone wanted something. Metrics, charts, proof the system was real, and not just smoke and mirrors. I gave them what they wanted, no edge in my voice. No delay in delivery, but something inside me clicked into place, not rage, not revenge, not yet, just a calm, clinical understanding. They were now using a system whose legal operating status was tied to one line in a contract that no one but me had bothered to read. And that line had one condition: my employment and compensation. So when Bradley handed me that non-answer and walked away like I was lucky to still have a badge, he was not just stiffing me a bonus. He was pulling the pin on the very grenade I had buried in the foundation of their precious platform. All I had to do now was let gravity take its course. I did not tell anyone. I did not run to human resources, did not message our lead counsel. I just opened my encrypted folder, found the portable document format file, highlighted the clause, and stared at it for a long moment. I remembered the meeting with the vendor, remembered how hard I had to fight to get that clause included. I was not even supposed to be negotiating. Bradley had dropped the ball, of course, but I stepped in, spent 3 weeks wrangling red lines and vendor-side counsel just to protect myself, just in case they ever decided to screw me like this. I went back to my inbox, sent out 3 high-priority reports, answered a couple of technical questions from the product team, and scheduled a sync for Monday. I smiled, waved to the intern, laughed at a joke I did not hear. Then I opened a fresh email, addressed it to legal, typed 4 words in the subject line. "For your information, potential issue. Monday morning smelled like stale donuts and denial." The confetti had barely been vacuumed out of the hallway rugs when the email blasts began. Subject lines like incredible teamwork and historic win for the organization, pinging inboxes like tiny corporate fireworks. And in each one, the same oily fingerprints. Senior leadership patting themselves on the back for my work. The official post-mortem dropped around 10 o'clock in the morning. A neat document dressed in charts I designed, colored in branding I customized, stitched together with metrics pulled directly from my system's spine. There was a 2-page summary of the architecture written in third person like it was discovered in a field instead of engineered over 2 years of unpaid weekends. And nowhere did it say my name. The authors were the product lead, the vice president of operations, and Bradley. The man who once asked me basic programming questions had signed off on a technical overview that included phrases I wrote verbatim in chat 8 weeks ago. My name was gone. My contributions reduced to vague references about cross-functional input. I was not a person. I was a bullet point. I did not say a word, no passive-aggressive emoji reactions, no replies looping myself in. I opened a new local folder and labeled it simply Insurance. I started dragging copies, chat threads, design drafts, version histories, and architecture diagrams with timestamps. Not in anger. In preparation. A war does not start with a cannon blast. It starts with someone quietly sharpening a knife. By noon, the murmurs started. One of the development operations guys asked if anyone had cleared the final vendor clauses with legal before the system went live. Some weird stuff in Appendix F, he said casually, sipping from his mug. I kept my eyes on my screen, cleaning up post-launch cash reports. A project manager replied that legal probably skimmed it and nothing had come up. I smiled faintly, the kind of smile you give a magician right before he realizes the rabbit is chewing through his sleeve. And I took my lunch late around 2:30 in the afternoon when the break room cleared out. Leftover cake was still there, dry chocolate sheet cake with frosting that had crusted over like spackle. Someone had written success in red icing across the top. I sat by the window, not hungry, just absorbing, watching. Human resources walked by laughing with someone from sales. Product was already talking Q1 targets like we had not just survived a firestorm. Bradley strutted by with his coffee, talking loudly on his headset about centralizing insights. He did not look at me. He would not. I was not supposed to exist outside the code. And yet that afternoon I pulled up the license again. Not just the clause I highlighted last week, but the whole thing. Every page, every signature, every timestamp. I knew exactly how it would play out if I needed to drop it. Not just breach of contract level chaos, but system-wide blackout chaos. The kind of thing investors ask about on emergency earnings calls. The kind of thing compliance teams refer to as non-recoverable exposure. I did not need to swing yet. I just needed to wait. Let the silence stretch. Let Bradley forget what he skimmed. Let leadership polish their boots on my back a little longer. Let the rope tighten, because the moment they made it official, unpaid, unacknowledged, erased, that clause would activate like a tripwire. I left at 6 in the evening, not a second later, just like any other day. But I walked out holding a hard drive in my bag, encrypted, time-stamped, complete with a backup of the infrastructure dependency. Because when the system fails, they will need a miracle. And I had already decided I would not be in the building when they begged for one. The license sat in a folder no one else remembered, not even the procurement team. I labeled it with one of those boring file names that practically screamed to ignore it to anyone without a working understanding of versioning law. It had been sitting there since the day I signed it, tucked into a digital drawer like a loaded gun no one thought I would ever use. But I remembered. I remembered every line. It was a Wednesday. Everyone was still high on caffeine and ego from the launch. Bradley had started calling the system our baby in meetings, his voice taking on this weird paternal tone, like he had been there for more than 5 chat approvals and a lunch where he asked what a data warehouse was. They were already talking about expanding it to other departments, maybe even monetizing the metrics. A roadmap was forming, one built entirely on the spine of the platform I had architected, and they still had not paid me. So I opened the file. The clause was exactly where I remembered it. Section 17.5, subsection F, paragraph B. A single sentence, one legal needle buried in a haystack of whereas and therefore. In the event that the designated technical lead, meaning my name, is removed from compensated employment status for any period exceeding 96 hours, this license agreement shall be considered null and void, all associated access rights terminated without further notice. No gray area, no ambiguity, just a pure kill switch. That clause did not exist by accident. It was born out of spite. 2 years ago, Bradley and his buddies tried to outsource the analytics rebuild to a contractor, someone who bragged about engineering efficiency and thought documentation was optional. I caught the chat messages by mistake. They were ready to cut me out entirely. They said I was too protective, overly opinionated, and my salary was a cost inefficiency. So I made a call to the vendor. I explained the situation. I said we needed stronger language, made them put my name in the contract. If they wanted to use their software, I had to be paid, not just employed, compensated. I wanted to make sure they would never get to erase me quietly. And now we were standing on a legal landmine with both feet. I minimized the window, took a sip of my coffee, and opened my email. I drafted a new message to Sarah, our internal legal counsel. No drama, no warning shots, just 4 lines. Subject: for your information, potential issue. Hi Sarah, looping you in on the analytics license, specifically subsection F. There may be compliance implications if the current compensation structure is not aligned. Attaching for your review. I attached the contract, let the document speak for itself, and hit send. Nothing dramatic, no bells, no fire alarms. But as soon as I clicked that send button, the entire game changed. Because now it was not just about feelings. It was not about fairness or recognition. It was about legality. It was about governance. It was about how fast a company can fall apart when the one person who actually read the contract decides to stop protecting them from their own laziness. I did not watch for the read receipt, did not refresh to see if she replied. I just leaned back, stretched my neck, and listened to the hum of the servers my code still fed. They could keep pretending I did not matter. But now, every breath the system took was technically illegal, and I was the only one who could revive it. The first sign was the silence, not absence of noise silence, but targeted silence, the kind that spreads in pockets, the kind that is engineered. Legal message Bradley on Thursday morning. I know this because Sarah copied me in the message, just a brief, polite ask for clarification around the analytics licensing structure. Following up on subsection F, she wrote with all the dispassionate calm of a surgeon prepping a scalpel. Bradley did not respond, not immediately, not even after she followed up to confirm the compensation alignment. He left it unread for 8 hours. I watched his chat status bounce between active and in a meeting. Then something curious happened. I got removed from the data operations chat channel. No warning, no explanation, just poof. 1 second I was there reading a thread about integrating new endpoints. The next I was staring at a message saying I no longer had access. The same thing happened with the morning stand-up invite. It vanished from my calendar. They were icing me out. Bradley probably thought he was being strategic. Contain the fallout, limit his exposure, start restructuring without the headache of confrontation. Maybe he thought if he starved me of access, I would give up, walk away, quietly fade into the archives. Instead, I opened a new spreadsheet and titled it Critical Dependencies. I started listing everything. Daily sales dashboards powered by my pipeline, customer churn reports for the board, my scripts pulling real-time operations monitoring, forecasting tools for the quarterly call pulled from the models I deployed, data warehouse transformation scheduled with the jobs I handcrafted. By lunchtime, I had 58 systems linked to my codebase. By end of day, 90 systems. By midnight, 120 systems. Each one got its own line. Each one had a short description, timestamp, owner, and failure condition. I added a final column for the breakpoint without the license. Most of them would collapse within 96 hours of a vendor audit. Bradley's gamble was not just arrogant, it was suicidal, and still no reply from him. No response to legal, no course correction, just silence and soft isolation. They were betting I would go quietly, that I did not have receipts, that I was not vindictive enough or legally insulated enough to pull the trigger. What they did not realize is I built the trigger. I installed the wiring. I wrote the clause. I did not need to yell. I did not need to storm into a conference room. All I had to do was wait. I spent Friday morning exporting backup logs and storing dependency maps. I did not want revenge. I wanted evidence. If they came groveling, I wanted the power to say no. The fire had not reached them yet, but the smoke was coming through the vents. The meeting was not on anyone's calendar. No subject line, no chat pings, just a string of quiet shoulder taps from the legal department. Sarah pulling a handful of names into the conference room like she was assembling a jury before a sentencing. Inside, Bradley looked bored. Jason from Human Resources was chewing gum. A finance analyst fresh out of grad school looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Sarah sat at the end, laptop open, her fingers steepled like she was about to sentence someone to hell. I was not invited, of course, but I did not need to be because I already knew what file was open on her screen. The clause, the noose. Sarah had been digging, the kind of digging only lawyers with good instincts do. She had read the contract, actually read it, and understood what Bradley had not, that the license was not just a formality. It was a living contract, a heartbeat agreement, and the heart, that was me. "I want to verify something," Sarah said, her voice low like a bomb technician talking through a wire snip. "Is Robert currently being compensated in accordance with his employment agreement?" Jason spoke first, like it was a softball question. "Yes, of course. He is active. He has not been terminated." Sarah did not flinch. That was not the question. "Has he been paid?" A pause. Finance flipped through a spreadsheet, frowning. "His Q3 performance bonus is still under review. I do not see a disbursement yet." Bradley jumped in too fast, eager. "We are still evaluating performance metrics tied to the rollout. I mean, the team did great, obviously. But there is some policy-level stuff around post-launch incentive triggers that we are reviewing." Sarah held up a hand, slow, surgical. Then she closed the laptop, not slammed, just a quiet final closing like a lid on a coffin. She looked at them and said, "If he is unpaid, we are in breach." Jason blinked. "Of what?" Sarah pointed to the laptop. "Clause 17.5, subsection F. The license agreement that gives us legal access to 85% of our analytics infrastructure. The clause that requires Robert to be in compensated employment status in order for that license to remain valid." Bradley tried to laugh. "That is just boilerplate." "No," Sarah said so softly it made the air go cold. "It is not." The room went still. Sarah leaned forward. "If this is not fixed, we are out of compliance. Which means our access to the system is the legal department. Which means every dashboard, every report, every investor call using that data becomes exposure. Which means you," she turned to Bradley, "need to explain why you failed to process a compensation clause that has operational kill switch language attached." Bradley looked like a man slowly realizing his parachute was actually a gym bag. "I did not know," he mumbled. "You were in the loop," she replied. "You signed the disbursement delay form. You authorized the review freeze." The finance kid cleared his throat. "We thought it was standard." "It is not standard." Sarah cut him off. "It is negligence." She stood up. "I am escalating this to the chief executive officer. If he is not paid by the end of the day, we will be in breach. And if that happens, I will have to file a formal notification with our outside counsel and the vendor's compliance team." She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "And if you think he is bluffing, you should read the rest of the contract. He wrote most of it. It started with a missed email." At 4:15 in the morning, the automated report for global sales reconciliation did not land in the chief financial officer's inbox. At 4:45, an intern pinged the chat. By 5:15, the development operations group chat was a war zone. No one could access the analytics cluster. The container logs were clean. No deploys overnight. But the application programming interface keys were throwing a 5002 error from the vendor. Then came the message, not from me, not from the legal department, from the system. Every executive dashboard, board metrics, investor projections refreshed with a single red banner. License unrecognized. Contact account holder. That was the clause. That was the line in subsection F, flipping its middle finger to every one of them because they had not paid me. By 8 o'clock in the morning, Bradley's voicemail was full. People started hovering near his door. I watched the whole thing from the break room, feet up, sipping coffee. I was not gloating. I just existed, calm, a ghost in the machine. By 8:45, it had escalated to the legal department. By 9:15, Sarah was outside the chief executive officer's office, black binder in hand. By 9:30, the emergency meeting was called. In person only. The subject line on the invite said urgent. I was not invited, but my name was already in the room. Bradley tried to spin it as a technical hiccup. Sarah slid the contract across the table. Clause 17.5, subsection F. Termination upon non-compensated status of the designated technical lead. The chief executive officer asked, "Is this real?" Sarah just nodded. "Is he still on payroll?" Finance shook their head. I was still in the break room. A second alert hit the screens. Data pipeline suspended due to license breach. You could feel the panic start to rip through the walls, because this was not a bug. This was compliance. This was exposure. Every dashboard they had prepped for the quarterly call was now legally inadmissible. They could fire me, but they could not run the company after they did. "Please tell me you paid him," Sarah said, eyes locked on Bradley. "He is active status," Bradley stammered. "That is not what I asked," Sarah replied. "Was he paid?" From the junior finance analyst in the corner came the truth. His Q3 bonus was withheld, still under internal review. Sarah closed the binder with surgical precision. "Then you better call your investors." Silence detonated in the room. The chief financial officer visibly paled. The chief executive officer did not move. Bradley tried to laugh it off again as exaggerated legalese. Sarah cut in, confirming it was enforceable. The window of 96 hours had expired at 1:15 in the morning. She strongly recommended issuing retroactive compensation immediately and preparing a disclosure for the board. Bradley was sweating. "I did not know." "You signed the contract," Sarah replied, "and he flagged it in writing twice." They finally realized this was a professional system designed by someone they thought was disposable, held together by a clause none of them had read. Sarah paused at the door. "I will draft the disclosure. Let me know if you want me to include your names." By noon, the building had the quiet hum of a funeral home. The implosion had begun. The vendor sent a brutal email confirming the license was invalid due to breach. The account lead was me. I was working on something else, a freelance contract. Around 1:30 in the afternoon, Jason from Human Resources walked over, asking if I could help draft some transition documentation. I looked up. "You mean documentation for a system I cannot legally access anymore?" He nodded too fast and shuffled off. Human Resources tried to process a backdated bonus. The timestamp on the payroll adjustment showed as 12:15 in the afternoon, hours after the final deadline. They labeled it a manual adjustment. Sarah sent a company-wide email confirming retroactive compensation did not resolve the breach status. The platform remained unlicensed. The call came at 7:30 in the evening. Just as I was feeding my cat, my phone lit up with a direct dial from the chief executive officer. "What will it take?" he asked, desperation in his voice. I opened the folder titled Reinstatement and Buyout Proposal. We had prepared it weeks ago. I did not respond right away. Then I sent him the document. A 36-hour offer window. Immediate wire transfer of unpaid compensation, plus a 60% breach penalty buyout of the license clause for high six figures, and a written statement acknowledging my contribution. I heard him open it. 10 seconds of silence. "We should have just paid you the damn bonus. You have until close of business tomorrow." "Then the vendor gets the breach escalation," I said. I hung up, took a sip of wine, and watched my email for a wire confirmation. They did not just break a contract. They proved I was the only one holding the place together, and now they were paying for it on my terms. I sat there, watching the evening sky turn from a deep orange to a bruised purple over the city skyline. It is funny how much clarity you can find when you finally stop moving. For the last 2 years, my life had been a blur of terminal windows, database migrations, and endless cups of terrible office coffee. I used to think that the sheer quality of my work would be a shield, that if I built something truly undeniable, something that generated millions in value, the corporate machinery would be forced to acknowledge me. I was wrong. The machinery does not acknowledge the cogs, it only complains when they break. I thought back to how I first learned to code. It was not in some prestigious university program or a trendy boot camp. I was 30 years old, working a dead-end job in logistics, surrounded by boxes and shipping manifests. One day I looked at the mountain of paper records and realized there had to be a better way. I started reading documentation in the evenings. I learned the fundamentals of data structures, algorithms, and object-oriented design. I stayed up until 3 in the morning writing small scripts to automate my daily tasks. When I finally transitioned into software engineering, I brought that same blue-collar work ethic with me. I treated every codebase like a warehouse that needed organizing. I documented everything. I tested every edge case. I built systems that were designed to survive a nuclear apocalypse. And that was the irony of it all. I had built their analytics platform to be completely fault-tolerant. It had redundancies upon redundancies. It could handle spikes of 10,000% over baseline without dropping a single packet. It was resilient against bad data, aggressive crawlers, and unexpected hardware failures. The only thing it was not resilient against was human greed. The only vulnerability I could not patch with code was the sheer, breathtaking arrogance of management. They had assumed that because I was quiet, I was weak. They mistook my professionalism for submission. I took another sip of my wine. It was a Cabernet Sauvignon, a relatively cheap bottle I had picked up at the corner store, but tonight it tasted like victory. My cat, a cynical tabby named Barnaby, hopped onto the desk and began aggressively headbutting my keyboard. I scratched him behind the ears, letting the silence of my apartment wrap around me. My phone sat face down on the desk, silent for now, but I knew the storm was still raging downtown. I imagined the scene in the office. I imagined Bradley, sweat soaking through his designer shirt, desperately trying to explain to the board why the company's most critical data infrastructure was locked behind a compliance breach. I imagined the chief financial officer staring blankly at the dark monitors, realizing that their quarterly earnings report was now legally compromised. I imagined Sarah, our lead counsel, probably the only competent executive in the building, calmly sipping tea while the rest of them ran around like decapitated chickens. Data is the lifeblood of the modern enterprise. They used to say, cash is king, but cash only tells you what happened yesterday. Data tells you what is going to happen tomorrow. It tells you who your customers are, what they want, and exactly when they are going to leave you for a competitor. Without my system, they were flying blind in a hurricane. They could not forecast revenue. They could not track user engagement. They could not even run a basic payroll audit without hitting a wall of corrupted metrics. For a brief second, I felt a twinge of guilt. Not for Bradley or the executives, but for the rank-and-file employees. The marketing coordinators, the sales associates, the junior developers who were probably working late, trying to manually patch the holes left by the outage. But the guilt faded quickly. This was not my fault. I had warned them. I had sent the emails. I had followed the protocol. They were the ones who decided that saving a few $1,000s on a promised bonus was worth risking the entire company. The clock on the wall ticked past 9 o'clock in the evening. I opened my laptop and checked my personal email. A notification popped up from my bank. The wire transfer had not arrived yet, but I knew it would. They had no other choice. The 60% breach penalty was steep, but it was pocket change compared to the fines they would face if the vendor formally reported the violation. And the written statement acknowledging my contribution? That was just the cherry on top. I planned to frame it and hang it right next to my degree. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. Tomorrow I would wake up, brew a fresh pot of coffee, and check my bank account. If the money was there, I would send the vendor the release form. If it was not, I would go for a long walk in the park and let the company burn down. Either way, I was finally free. The system I built had done exactly what it was designed to do. It had protected its creator. And as for Bradley? Well, I doubted he would be getting his Q3 bonus either.